Welcome to Creators Who Convert, the show where we dive deep into how amazing creators actually drive revenue. Today, I'm joined by Jon Brosio, and Jon is a really interesting creator. He's been on my radar for a while. It seems like every platform I join, Jon's already there with a massive audience already built, super engaging content. And he's kind of gone from this really interesting position of losing his job to building this really thriving creator business, gaining hundreds of thousands of followers along the way, and mastering multiple income streams, which is really interesting. He's killing it on LinkedIn, he's killing it on Threads, X, and once upon a time, even Medium. So I'm really excited to welcome Jon to the show. Jon, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The Medium is a throwback, but also Quora, which is one of the first places I actually started. So I've got my fingers kind of everywhere.
I love that. And we're going to dive into that for sure. Jon, you're this amazing creator. You've got so many different interesting stories to tell. I want to take it back to the beginning. Could you maybe dive into a little bit about what it was like when you initially lost your job and that kind of becoming this catalyst that started this 30-day writing challenge?
Yeah, so that's the genesis really of my story. I had just moved to LA, and after about 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks, I was working at a restaurant that caught fire, burned down, and I was already in a place in my mid-20s where I didn't really see continuing in the restaurant industry as like a viable option for me. I just was doing it. It was quick cash, and I was in my mid-20s. But I also never thought that I would find myself on unemployment. I come from a middle-class background, and I'd never had my parents deal with anything like that. I was very lucky to have that kind of upbringing. And so there I was, and I thought, okay, I'm unhappy in this career path as a server. I'm on unemployment. I have time. Let me see if I can just find a little avenue that I can kind of control. And I started writing online. Now, I did what I would advise against, and I immediately just went in and I bought some hosting on Wix.com, and I set up a page. I keep it live as a reminder. So if anyone listening wants to go and check it out, but it's where'sthefidelity.com because I thought there wasn't enough fidelity in the world. And I was just writing things that were coming to my head. I had a story about a conversation in a hot tub at the LA complex I was living at. I had a story about how I was going to go picking, which is like estate sale shopping with my barber. Nothing ever came about. My mom maybe read some of the posts, and that's it. And along the way, when you do things, I don't exactly know how to explain it. I'm sure there's like a word for it. But when you do things, you kind of like reveal cookie crumb trails that you didn't really know, or you weren't consciously looking for them. So the way this happened for me is I came across a post about Quora. This is very early 2017. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. I just saw all these questions. So I just thought, okay, these are like writing prompts. Let me try to answer these questions. And I would do 2 a day minimum. And I said, let me commit to 30 days of doing this. I've got time. I don't have a job. I'm kind of confused. And so that's what I did. And 30 days turned into 100. And really, we can just fast forward out and it'd be 17 to 2025, 8 years, right, of doing this. But that really helped me learn the chops of writing for an audience, because there were these questions that people wanted answered, and really developing the habit of structuring content. And so that was really the genesis of how I started on this journey. And we can go in a bunch of different directions that we want, but that's the start.
I love that. And I think that's really interesting to hear that for you, it was a kind of writing style that was very much geared towards people asking questions. I think you hear this like kind of mantra all the time of just write, just sit down and write. And I always think, like, why would you just write? You need to kind of write for a purpose. So what was it about kind of that style of writing that connected with you? Because it's not everybody's kind of favorite style. I think in our creator space, it's really important that you're being direct and answering people's questions, queries, like ideas. What was it about that writing style that really connected with you?
So there's this saying, excuse me, on the internet that kind of just drives me crazy. You've seen it. People listening have seen it, where it's consistency is everything, right? Just stay consistent and you'll be able to attract the audience. You'll be able to monetize your brand, all this. And I always ask the question afterwards that I don't see anyone asking, which is, what if you're consistently doing the wrong thing, right? Like consistency is everything until a point. If you're consistently doing the wrong thing, then it's going to drive you into a wall, right? And you're going to end up probably further behind than just the act of the consistent action. So the way I always saw falling into Quora kind of serendipitously was, I have 101 market validation, market research in front of me, right? The way that they try to position themselves as a platform is, we want questions that Google cannot answer, right? So a lot of times these are more feeling questions or perspective questions from other human beings. And I had just lost my job, and I'm reading a lot to try to like pick myself back up and reevaluate what I want in life. And so I'm writing a lot about the books that I'm reading and things like that, and a lot of personal development. And what I'm seeing is, instead of just writing thoughts that come into my head, which could send me down the path of consistently doing the wrong thing, like an audience doesn't care about you. They care about themselves, and you are the medium to give them kind of a message that helps them achieve whatever it is they're trying to achieve. And so now I don't use it as much, but it helped me build a Rolodex of how to write for a recipient rather than write for myself. And I think that if someone is listening there, I want to start sharing my knowledge, insight, and skills online. I don't know exactly how to do it. I would look for forums like Quora to just see what people are asking about and then answer it.
And they kind of work on the system of like upvotes, I'm guessing, or you kind of rank the best answer. Is that right?
They do. And there's ways to kind of cheat it. We don't need to go super into that because there is a redistribution of earnings on the platform, and people have like gamified that and turned it into kind of a mess of itself. But I think just from a first glance perspective, to look at a question and say, I have some insight on that. Let me answer it without kind of expectation of outcome in the beginning, right? In the very beginning. I think that's a healthy way of approaching it. And I almost see it akin to just doing bicep curls at the gym, right? You don't need to start with the 40-pound dumbbells and really try to just maximize, like just start with 15, no matter what your level is. And that will give you a cookie crumb trail to the next exercise and upping of the weight and things like that. And that's how I viewed, again, 7-8 years ago, just answering questions on Quora.
Yeah. It's so interesting because, I mean, the reason for our audience why I asked Jon this is Jon was one of the biggest, probably still is one of the biggest authors, both on Quora and on Medium. So I think that kind of says quite a lot about your writing style. And that's kind of really what I want to get into. You have this amazing way of writing where it's super, super engaging, but it actually goes deep. It's not kind of surface level. I'm kind of guessing that's a style that you've honed and practiced over the years. And I know that you have this really interesting take, which is that for you and your newsletter, you almost use that as a testing bed of ideas. You will put ideas out there. You will maybe even ask your audience, what is it that you're looking for in terms of certain offer ideas or different kind of things in that nature. How has your writing style changed and crafted itself into the way that it is now, where you're able to create these amazing, be it newsletters, be it LinkedIn posts, be it threads, be it any form of kind of engaging text that people can read? It feels like you've really, really honed your craft over the years. Is that through, creating frameworks? Is that like down to some amazing book that you read? Can you spill us a little bit of the secret sauce there?
Absolutely. So there's kind of a 35,000 foot view side to this question. And then there's kind of a more like micro tactical side. And I'll give you a little bit of both. I do believe that good, insightful, deeper content comes from conversation. This is kind of the 35,000 foot view. And conversation happens for me now. It happens with my clients because I'm rolling up my sleeves and actually helping them implement things in real time that is driving them towards the desired outcome of my program, of my coaching, of my services. And so I can extract like in real time insights that I know are valuable because I'm having the conversation with them, taking the essence of it, putting it into my newsletter, putting it into my content and everywhere like that. On a more tactical side, I do think that even though I fell into it, I do think I got kind of a master's level class on writing to a specific person by, you can go because it's on the internet, it's there. You can see on my Quora timeline, there's hundreds, if not thousands of questions answered. And so again, if we think about it like the bicep curl, like you go in and it's like, I want to know how to write to someone, right? To make it feel like a conversation. Well, if someone asks you a question and similar to the dialogue we're having now, it's easy to respond back and make it feel personal and get as specific as you'd like and share your wisdom, knowledge, and insight. And so I would say that has helped. And then over time, sure, there are books that I've read in terms of like structuring, opening, kind of insight, closing, things like that. And that's a little bit more to like go instead of from 0 to 1, that's going from like 10 to 100, where it's like, okay, I know the structure. I've had the conversation. Let me just put the piece of the puzzle together now instead of just writing from scratch every time.
Yeah, that viewpoint is really, really important. And it totally depends on the platform that you're speaking on, the kind of intimacy that you're speaking at. I guess like if it's a newsletter, it's probably going to be a lot more intimate. You're kind of speaking to your inner circle to an extent. So you've kind of like dominated so many different platforms in really interesting ways. And, like on LinkedIn, there's this really popular post format, and I actually credit you with it. It's the classic like screenshot tweet style of like the name, the tweet, maybe some engagement there. And you were the first person I saw really dialing into that post format. And I kind of just thought this is just Jon's style. And it hit me at a point where nobody else was doing it. It was like a super novel approach. And I think that's something that I've seen with your content style and your writing, where it's just constantly fresh. You're constantly bringing a new take to something. So I'd be really interested in diving in. What is your process for coming up with these fresh ideas after you've put out thousands and thousands of pieces of content already?
Yeah, it's a great question. And before we get into like how the process happens, what I do see, maybe you saw it, you just didn't articulate it like this, is the screenshot of the tweet to me is like the headline on a newspaper, right? Part of this game, if you want to call it that, the online attention game, the audience building game, the monetization game, is hooking people and capturing their attention. And I just intuitively thought, after years of headline writing on Medium, headline writing on Quora, that I can probably capture attention better with a tweet that makes people think, that gets people emotional, that provides insight better than a selfie, which you see a lot of on, sites like LinkedIn, for instance. I just thought, like, if I can deliver a message in 2.5 seconds versus, oh, that's a nice sunset and the person's smiling, but they're kind of looking like this. I just saw it as a better tactical approach. What I would say in terms of the entire process is I actually start on Twitter and I use it almost as like an idea generator, an idea nexus point, rather than any type of like lead gen or things like that. Now I know it's viable for that. I just personally don't use it. I'm just shelling out ideas, because what that platform forces you to do is take deep insights and package them into 140 characters or less. And that is a skill that, honed over time, can help you, again, create that hook point and attract attention.
Mm.
I take that, and for the longest time, I would just develop the idea into a longer form post, put that on LinkedIn. When I was doing more of Medium, put it on Medium. Now what I do is I take that idea, I lean on AI to give me kind of a starting point, and then I actually act more as the editor than I do the actual writer, right? I have prompts where I've given AI hundreds of pieces of content so it knows my style. And I say, hey, from this tweet, I want to go on this idea. I want to highlight this pain, frustration, or desire in my target audience, right? And we're getting more into targeted content. And let's do it with this structure. I'll edit it as we go. And again, it gives me a starting point, and I act more as the editor now than the actual writer.
Super interesting. So it's like a writing partner. You're still very much in control,
100%.
but it just knows you.
100%.
Nice. It's really interesting to hear your process, because I think you've kind of gone on this journey where you started off writing for different platforms and honed your style over time. How would you kind of help somebody, and I guess this is really at the crux of what you do, who's just starting out, who really wants to understand, how can I create better content? You know, maybe they have a service or an idea of a service, but they understand that social media is really the center point of everything if you want to try and, you know, get attention in the modern day. How do they go about creating that content? Because I think sometimes like staring at a blank piece of paper is like the most intimidating thing in the world. How does a new creator get started, and what's some kind of tips for them to be able to get the kind of content that makes moves online?
Absolutely. So I highlighted this or foreshadowed this perhaps a little bit earlier. Is I'd say 2 years ago, my answer would be different. 2 years ago, and it's still a viable answer, but I don't think it gets the results mainly of monetization, which I think a lot of people is their incentive for doing this. 2 years ago, it would have been go to Quora, search the topic keyword of your niche of interest, and just start answering questions. Build the mental Rolodex of having a conversation in that niche. Now, I change it a little bit, and I recommend to my audience in my newsletter, I recommend this to my private clients, is we start with the offer. And the reason I start with the offer is because this actually, from previous clients that I've had, I've worked with people that have bigger audiences than me. And I'll get DMs all the time. One individual, I won't name drop this person, but they have an audience of like 350,000 people. And I got a ping for a DM, and it said, hey, Jon, I have a huge audience. Like, how do I monetize it? And the first question I asked was, awesome, super excited for you. Who's your audience? And the response back to that I got was, what do you mean? And I said, you can only monetize with a tangible outcome or transformation or promise if you know exactly who you're talking to help them achieve it. And a lot of people can run very quickly into the trap of, you see a lot of LinkedIn content that is infographics, and that stuff will spread like wildfire. And if your motivation is to just maximize the audience, drive people to a newsletter, and then sell sponsorships on that newsletter, that's a viable business model. You can do that. I know people who do it. It doesn't bring me any fulfillment really, so I don't bother with it. When you start with the offer, you know, who am I speaking to? What do I help them achieve? And how am I helping achieve that in a different, fresh, or novel way, right? From a broad strokes, 35,000 foot view, that's how I see an offer. Now to structure it, I have 4 tenets of an offer, call it the 4 Ps of an offer. It's your promise. What's the desired outcome you're helping people achieve? The path, and this is what a lot of people miss. How are you going to articulate and give your prospect checkpoints of achieving that? Your pricing, how are you going to structure the pricing so it makes people easier to commit? And pressure, how are you going to incentivize people to act now versus put it off to later? We can dial in, double click on any of that you'd like. But when you do that, especially the promise and the path, you can then create content from that viewpoint. Say, here's every single post is going to help people achieve blank, and I help them achieve it with this 3-pronged approach, I can just create content from each of those 3 prongs over and over and over again, sharing a different viewpoint, sharing a different perspective, a different mindset, or a different story. And I have an endless amount of ideas, again, that speak to the right person at the right time, helping them achieve their desired outcome. And that's how I would approach it. I know there's a lot there. We can break it all up, but someone starting from zero, start with the offer.
I love that. This is probably, if anybody who's listening wants to find the point to bookmark, that was it right there. Because that is so valuable. And in all my years of like understanding how attention online works, the attention currency and persuasion, all the other things that go into crafting a great online business, I think you just summed it up perfectly. I'd be really interested to just dive into a few of those aspects. So the 4 Ps, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the, I guess, like pressure aspect
Mm-hmm.
of you trying to get somebody to kind of like make the close, I guess like content is right at the top of the funnel. And I guess it trickles down further and further to the point where you make the sale, unless you're doing something really broad, like, click this link and buy a $37 ebook.
Mm-hmm.
How do you kind of apply that pressure in obviously a kind of like a ethical way, but like, how do you get them to that point where they're actually thinking this is the person that I need to enlist for whatever service or product that they're selling?
Before you ever get to the tactical part of pressure, there's a mindset shift that I think a lot of people, it takes them a while to realize. And the mindset shift is, a lot of people see price as the cost of something, right? Jon, how on earth, I've never had a single client before in my life. How on earth am I going to charge someone $2,500, $3,000, $5,000? I even have a client who's on a $20,000 deal. How am I ever going to be able to charge that amount? That's looking at it through the mindset of the cost of your services. And instead, when you've done the work in skill acquisition, in knowledge gathering, in insight collection, what I train my clients and my private students is to not see the price of your offer as a cost, but more as your value. And I know that's a little bit of kind of a lofty conception, but when people come to me, and I had a lot of work to get through this, but when people come to me, like my first ever product was a $13.50 PDF, kind of what you already said. I sold it in May of 2018. I won't name his last name, but I'll never forget his first name, Daniel. And I thought like I was going to be rich. Like the Stripe notification came through my phone. I thought I was going to be so rich. I made $0 the rest of 2018 on digital sales. So it didn't happen. But I want to, as much as I can, really instill the idea that when you can craft an offer, and I work with people and I have a structure to actually put the 4 Ps into action, but to not see your offer, it doesn't cost anything, right? Cost is irrelevant, but it has a certain amount of value. And I think when you can step into that and see that, then you can start to get into the practical side of the pressure. And I'd love to kind of dive into that if you want. Cool. So when I say pressure, I won't reveal how much she ever paid because we made a promise to my father and there's a chance he might listen to this someday. My sister went and saw 2 years ago Taylor Swift in concert, paid a lot of money for the tickets. A lot of people don't know this, but a concert is always a good example of how to create pressure because by the nature of a concert, it's built into it. There's 2 elements to pressure. There's urgency and scarcity. My sister went and saw Taylor Swift at Soldier Field in Chicago. And let's just say for even numbers, there were 60,000 seats that could be available to see her. That's scarcity. Only 60,000 seats. If you don't get one of them, you're not going to see her on this date. That's the urgency, right? It happens on this date. If you're not there to see it, she's gone to the next city. There's a lot of people that don't use those two mechanisms in their offer. We can use both scarcity and urgency. Hey, I'm starting my program on this date, and I'm only allowing 5 people in, right? You're changing the frame again to my program costs a certain amount to no, my program has this value, and I'm going to see myself like Taylor Swift. Okay. We're starting on this date, and I only have this amount of seats available. And so that's a tactical way of kind of applying pressure that incentivizes people to act, because a lot of people commoditize themselves and turn themselves into, please, I have this amazing offer. Like, I'm just following up. Did you get a chance to read it? Did you look at it? And again, that takes the frame control away from you and allows your prospect to commoditize you. And they're not even consciously doing it. You're training them to think of you that way. And I try to get my clients out of that mode so they can close more deals and share more of their knowledge, insight, and tools with the people who need it.
Do your clients, are they kind of working on the higher ticket, like one-to-one coaching or group coaching model, or does it kind of vary, like SaaS founders or people that have like different brands? Like what is your kind of typical client, and how do you kind of help them?
So I have kind of 2 buckets of clients that I work with. One of them is more of the one-on-one consulting. I mentioned earlier that I had a client close a $20,000 deal. I'm very proud of him. He creates bespoke simulation models for logistics companies. Very, very specialized, tiny niche. Okay. His problem was he ran into a lot of his prospects, and a lot of people do this, I think, out of good intentions, where they hop on a call and they try to create a custom offer with each prospect that comes through the door, which is again, an act in good intentions. But I feel like the pitfall that you run into is you're asking them discovery questions to see exactly what you need. And you can run into this place where they don't know what they need. That's why they're on the call with you, right? They're looking for, and this is one of the elements of an offer, they're looking for a path to achieve their outcome. And if you're going to build the path with them, it sounds great in theory, but a lot of the times it just confuses both you and the prospect. So that's one person. We worked with him, and we were able to close a deal with someone who said no to him, actually, initially with the custom offer. We turned it into a formalized offer and ended up closing them. The other person is more of the, I have all of these amazing ideas. A lot of these ideas come from maybe their full-time job. They don't know how to package that into a side hustle or a viable online business. And so another one of my clients is an ABAP programmer. If you don't know what ABAP is, that's fine. When I first met him, I did not know what it was, but it's a specialized version of computer programming.
Okay. I'm a coder, and I don't even know that. So I'm well out of my depths here.
So it's okay. ABAP SAP. Have you heard of that?
I haven't, no.
Okay. So again, super niche, which is super pressure niche, testing my expertise of like, if we can make it in super niche, we could probably have no problem with a lot of people listening. But he had all this knowledge, insight, skills, and he wanted to coach people, but he's like, I don't even know what square one is or step one is.
Right.
And so really we just took his, and I wish I could like put up on the screen, like the first version of his offer that he wrote for me and like the editing process to where we got him. But he was able to close his first client ever for his program. And again, that's kind of like going from 0 to 1. And then there's the other clients I work with that are like, no, I have validity. I've pressure tested things. I just want it more uniform. That's going from like 10 to 100.
I love that. It's so interesting because, you know, they're very similar in the respect of like you're trying to close something or you're trying to put your product out there and get people to have interest. But actually they have completely separate approaches. And, you know, somebody's day one is completely different. Somebody who's been doing it for years and is just trying to craft their offer. And I guess you kind of optimize over time as well. It kind of sounds like a lot of the content that you've created has come as a result of optimizing over just years of just, writing and writing and writing. I'd be really interested if there were, if you were kind of starting from zero and you had like zero audience and you had almost like a 90-day monetization plan. You had to try and get, your first dollar or, insert number here after 90 days. What would your approach be? I mean, this is like 2025. Things are kind of in a different space at the moment, but you're constantly killing it on all of your platforms. What would you do if you had to start from complete scratch?
It's a great question. So what I would do, if we're assuming you have an idea of what you want to do to craft that into an offer, so we're not going to go into like how to extract ideas and things like that, but let's just say you have even a broad strokes idea, and you weren't going to, let's also hold the variable that you're not going to hire someone. You're going to try to bootstrap all of this and figure it out on your own. What I would do is I would take the idea of my 4 Ps, start with your promise, and write out, I want to help fill in your avatar, achieve the outcome by this method. Just write that out. Don't overthink it. Scratch it out on paper. The next thing I would do, because it is 2025, is I would go to AI, ChatGPT, and say, hey, I'm working on an offer and I want to figure out my promise. My promise is, paste in what we just created there. And then this is something I work through with my clients. I would say, I want you to perform what I like to call the point to it test. You give a little context as to what that is. The point to it test is to make sure we have a measurable, quantifiable outcome that if we lined up 100 of our dream clients and we asked them to point to a specific outcome, they would be able to point to it with zero context added. Okay, I know that's a little bit heady right there, but a problem that a lot of people run into is I help nurses collect their skills and achieve their wildest dreams and become nomad nurses. And it's like, that means too many things to too many different people, right? Whereas I help nurses increase their salary by 10K or more and help them find their dream job regardless of geography. That's still a work in progress. But if you lined up 100 nurses, they'd all be able to get an idea of what the outcome is. So that would be the first thing that I would do. I would also think about, okay, if that's my dream outcome, and again, just think about first draft. Don't overthink these things. Give yourself 3 steps you would need to achieve that. Okay. Well, the first thing, if we're going on the thread of the nurses, the first thing we would need to do is we would need to clean and polish up their resume, right? The next thing we would need to do is we would need to find the hidden, this would be like copywriting, but we'd find the hidden underground jobs network that isn't promoted on sites like LinkedIn. And then 3, we would send out our resume regardless of geographic constraints to our dream prospects and land your next job that increases your salary 10K. So that gives us half of our offer right there. For pricing, I would start with something that scares you slightly, but also isn't just giving away all your knowledge and insight for free. And then over time, you're going to test it with people you're having conversations with. And again, I would see yourself like Taylor Swift and say, I'm only working with 2 people this month and we're starting on this date. Send it to as many eyeballs as you can and take the feedback seriously, but don't take it personally. You're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of what the hell is this? Take it seriously. A golden question that I use, and then I'll kind of put a bow on this. Golden question that I use is I ask prospects, where did this offer fail you? Most of the time, people want to ask, what don't you like about this? Or what can I do to improve this offer? And you get ghosted. No one wants to. Human beings, I like to believe, want to A, correct people, and B, be seen as like a good person. When you take the responsibility and say, where did I fail you with this offer? you will get responses back. Oh, you didn't fail me. You did not fail me. But I'm not really looking for this right now. This is the golden feedback. And that's what I would do. Send it to as many eyeballs as you can. And for the people that give you no, just ask them, where did I fail you? And you'll get so much quality feedback to help iterate your offer.
I love that. And it's those prompting questions that really get to the heart of what your ideal client is looking for. And a lot of times you just got to ask them. It's kind of like people go through these massive things of like sending out questionnaires and, where do you sit on 0 to 10? And if you just ask somebody, they're going to probably tell you what their problem is. And, they're waiting for you to solve that problem for them, which is really interesting. And I really love what you said about just like pick a number that scares you. I think so many times I see people who have an offer and they pitch it and it sounds amazing and they've kind of got me every single step along the way. And their pricing is just too small. And actually it does a disservice where you think if they're selling it for such a cheap price, it's kind of like either they're trying to get as many people in the door as they can, or the product's just not very good. So I think like actually if people do have a burning problem and they do have an issue with something that they want to try and solve, they will pay that price for it. And if they won't, then they're probably not your customer anyway. So I think that's a really, really interesting take.
So what I articulated earlier, you just kind of reflected it back perfectly, is your viewing of them when they have that lower price, you're commoditizing them and they don't realize it. But you're like, wait a minute. If this was really awesome, why is it only $150? Right? So yeah, choose a price that scares you a little bit.
Love that. Jon, this has been incredibly valuable. Before we wrap up, I have 2 final questions for you. Is that cool?
It's cool with me.
All right. So first one, be really interested to get your take on. What's one piece of advice about creator monetization that goes against conventional wisdom, but has worked for you?
Conventional wisdom is audience first. And I get it. Everyone wants leverage, but the problem is the people that are saying audience first are generally the people that have the survivor bias of having that audience, because there's a lot of people that don't ever reach that. There's a lot of variables as to why they don't reach that. They're not speaking to the right people. They don't have their structure of their content right. They're not leveraging the best distribution in terms of platforms. Their timing is bad. Instead of audience first, I've already highlighted this. What I recommend is offer first. Because when this was even before I was in restaurants, my first ever kind of big boy job out of college, I had a mentor, a boss, who told me, I was in between paths at the company. And he told me, Jon, if you don't know where you're going, any path will take you there. I think that's probably a phrase a lot of people have heard. And I do think that when you go with the audience first approach, you can kind of just chase engagement over messaging, right? You can speak to what gets likes instead of what actually builds trust. And what builds trust is speaking directly to a specific person. And again, we take a step back from that. When you outline your offer, who do I want to help? What do I want to help them achieve? And how am I going to help them achieve it in a novel or different way? Then your content makes sense. And when people listen, it resonates, it builds trust, and ultimately conversions.
Love that. I think you've got such a great take on that. Jon, finally, for anyone who's listening, inspired by your journey, wants to learn a little bit more about you, maybe even about Complete Creator, what's the best way to contact you and the way that they can learn a bit more about you?
Best way to contact me is send me a DM on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/IN/Jon Brosio. Jon with no H. There is also a Jon Brosio who's an art teacher in LA. I don't know if he's going to want DMs about stuff that we've talked about today. So just Jon with no H. Or visit my website, jonbrosio.com. If you want to dive further into any of the stuff we talked about today, offer creation, funnel building, conversions. You can find all of my insights, all of my resources there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Jon, thank you so much for sharing openly with us. To our listeners, you can find all of the links mentioned in today's show in the description. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to follow Creators Who Convert wherever you get your podcasts. Jon, thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers.